Today we're going to be working on a 2008 Infiniti G37. We're going to be removing the display and the radio here. This is the non-navigation version, so we'll be installing the NISK. So the first step will be removing the shift knob area here. We're going to turn this counterclockwise to remove it, and then we'll pull up on the boot here, and we can use a pry tool to pull this up and pull it out like that. This is a manual, so this is a different process if you have an automatic. If you do have an automatic, you'll just pull down the boot, take off the clip, and pull off the shifter knob, and it'll be the same steps for taking this out. So the next step is we're just going to pull this out, and we're going to have to unplug this plug here. There we go. And we'll set this to the side for now. And next we'll move on to taking out these two screws here. Once those are removed, you can pull out on the bottom and pull this trim down, and we're going to unplug these connectors here. Next we'll be pulling out all of these plugs on the back of this. And now that this is removed, we'll move on to taking out the display. So next we'll take out these two screws here. Once the screws are removed there, we can pull this trim out. And if it does get stuck at the top up here, you can use a pry tool, and you'll be pulling out these clips on top here. You'll just push those down, and it'll allow this to come out of place. So we're going to remove these two bolts up here, and then we'll have two more on the bottom as well that we'll take out. And the bottom two will be right down here. And once those are removed, we can go ahead and pull out the radio. We're going to put these plugs to the side for now, and we're ready to unplug everything here. These top two plugs go to this AC module, so we're just going to leave those to the side, and they do have these yellow pieces of tape here, so we'll use that to remember those later. And next we're going to unplug all of these. There we go. And now we can set the radio to the side. Now to remove the display fully, we're just going to pull it off of these pegs on the bottom, and then we've got these top clips that we pull out. And we're just going to disconnect everything on the back here. This plug came loose, it looks like, but normally it'll be clipped on here, and you'll unplug that. And now we've got everything removed, and we can work on the install. Today we're going to be doing the touchscreen overlay install for the NISK SKU. For this, we're going to be taking apart the display from the vehicle and adding in this touchscreen pane here. So our first step will be removing all the screws around here. It's going to be these two here. We're going to have two on the bottom, two more on the other side, and two on top. Alright, so now that we've got all those removed, we can go ahead and take this off. There we go. And now that we got the display removed, we've also got the four taken off on top and bottom. So we can remove this now, and we'll put this to the side. Alright, so now that we have the display with the back taken off, we can go ahead and use a pry tool to pop off the top here. So we're going to try to get right in between those. And you'll see these two clips came loose. And then we can pull it off. There are two more clips on the top as well here on the other side, so you might have to pull all of those off. And then as you can see here, we've got the display separate from this panel that was here. And then the next step will be putting this on top, and we're going to need to peel off both sides, the protective layer. And then we'll set this into place right on top there. And then for this part, you do want to make sure that you have the ribbon cable sticking off to this left side. And we're going to set this back on top. And it should pop right back into place. There we go, and you want to make sure all four clips clip into place. And your ribbon cable should be sticking out right underneath this little part that's risen up. And then from here, we're going to take our back and put it back on top. And we just want to make sure that the ribbon cable stays out like this. There we go. And now we've got everything back in place. We're going to go ahead and put our 4 screws back in. We've got the 2 on top and 2 on bottom. And now that we've got all 4 screws in, the 2 on top and 2 on bottom, we can set this back into place now. And then our ribbon cable should be sticking out over here. And we're going to line up the display and put in all 4 screws on the side now. And now we have the touchscreen overlay installed here. And the last thing we're going to need to do is just connect this cable here. So we'll show you how to do that. So we've got our display here with the ribbon cable. And we've got this harness here that's connected to our VAUX. So you're going to follow this wire here. And this clip will actually hold the ribbon cable. So we're going to insert that in, and we want to make sure that it's facing these silver pins, with the silver pins on the back of the ribbon cable. And once you have the ribbon cable inserted, you're going to push down on the top part, and it should clip into place fully. And then once we have this installed in the car, we'll plug the VAUX here into the VLine. So before we install the harnesses, we're going to go ahead and remove the glove box here, so we can run all of our wires in here to install the VLine. Our first step for that is going to be reaching back behind here and pulling out this clip. And we'll show you that once we get the glove box out. Then after that, you're going to have to push the glove box to the side to get the back clip out. Just like that. And then the left side one should come out. And then finally, these 3 clips on the bottom hold it in place. And the clip that we mentioned earlier is going to be right here. And it's on a string in the back, right here. So to reach back there, you're going to go behind the glove box, reach to the left, and then pull this off towards the driver's side. So the next step will be removing the side panel here, and we'll just use a panel topping tool for that. And that just pries right off and pulls out of place. And next we'll be removing a bunch of screws around here. We've got 4 on top and then 2 on the bottom. And then we'll remove the 2 down here. And then now we should be able to pull out the glove box. Alright, so now that we've removed the glove box, we need to remove this piece of trim on the side here, and we'll use a pry tool for that. And you can just pry up on that and push it out towards the passenger side. And then we'll be removing 7 screws total here. We have 4 along the top, 2 on the bottom, and then 1 way up here in the middle. And that'll be the 4 on top. Now we'll do the 2 on the bottom here. And then lastly, we have the 1 right up here in the top. And now we're ready to pull this out. Alright, so we're ready to pull this out. We do have to pull out this bottom panel first. We'll just push down on that, and that'll come out of place. And then now we'll just pull this down. And now we've got this out of the way. We're going to go ahead and find a spot to drill a hole in this to run our wires, and then we'll show you how to connect those. Alright, so we've drilled a hole right here. It's going to be next to the trunk button, and it's going to be in this little space here where there's actually a little bit more room for the harnesses to go down. So now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and run all of our harnesses from the back of the radio and display and run them over to this area. And so now that we've got the hole here, we're going to run all of our harnesses over to this area by this harness, and then we'll drop them down through here when we're finally done running them. Alright, so now we're ready to connect all of our harnesses. We have the MCF NISK first, and we'll just be plugging that into the radio connections. When you're back here, it's a good thing to separate these plugs. So this goes to the button panel, this goes to the AC controller. I want to put those to the side and focus on all of these harnesses that are at the bottom. So we're going to connect these down here now. be this connector here. And they only match up to the correct plug. There's no two plugs behind the radio that are the same, so you don't have to worry about that. And now that we've got those connected, these three plugs here will be going back to the radio. And next we'll move on to the display cable. Now we're ready to connect the NISK here, and we'll be connecting that to this plug. This yellow one here, it will plug in there, but that's not for the display, so you want to make sure you don't plug in our harness there. So this will plug in like that, and then we're going to run this end over towards the glove box. So we'll just run it behind here, and we're just going to leave it in the AC vent area for now, so we can run all of our cables over at the same time. Next we have our VAUX cable here. This is if you have the touchscreen overlay. If you don't have the touchscreen overlay, you won't be installing this. And we're just going to run the VAUX over towards the AC vent area. And we're going to leave just a little bit of slack here so we can connect this part to the ribbon cable. Alright, so next we're going to install the GPS antenna. We're going to remove the backing here. And then we're going to stick it on top of the AC vent on the driver's side. There we go. And that should be firmly in place. And then this part we're going to be running behind the trim with our other two cables. And we are going to leave a little bit of slack here behind the display for now. Then we'll come back and zip tie this up once we have all of our cables in the glove box. Lastly, we have our USB extension here. The customer requested that we stick it out on the passenger side here. So we're just going to show that. I'm just going to push through this female side. And then we're going to leave that hanging out. And then this side I'm going to route through along this side trim on the inside. And then we'll go through to the glove box. So now we're ready to run all of our wires through here, and since we have them all by the AC vent, we can just pull them straight through. Alright, so now that we have our wires through here, we're going to do some cable management real quick with any slack that we have, and then we'll come back. Alright, so we're ready to start running all of our harnesses through the hole here. We're going to start with our 20-pin connector. And we're just going to push that on its side. Push that through. And then next we're going to move on to our VAUX cable, which we're going to be unplugging the touch cable for, and the GPS antenna here. And then we're going to push those through. And then we've got the video cable. And lastly, we've got the USB here. Alright, so we're going to reconnect the VAUX now that we've got everything through. We've got the touch here. It's going to go into the 6-pin connector. And then the GPS, we're going to line up this top notch with the clip here, and we'll just push that into place. And now that we've got all these wires through, we're ready to put the glove box back into place. So we're going to plug in all three connectors on the top here. And we actually have the light bulb here. This one's pretty loose in this vehicle, so it came out. Just going to put that back into place. And then plug this 2-pin connector back in there. And then we got the trunk button last. Make sure you plug this back in or your trunk pop button won't work. And then now we're just going to get our cables in place and slide this into all the clips. And there we go. So we've got all the cables here for the V-line, and we're ready to reassemble the glove box. Alright, so we're ready to put in all 7 screws again. We're going to start with our bottom 2 here, just to make sure everything's lined up correctly. And now we're going to do our 4 across the top. then lastly, we have the one in the back. And now we're ready to start putting the glove box back in. Alright, so we're actually going to put this bottom piece in first. These back two clips here are going to go into two holes in the back corners. And then these three clips that are upwards will snap into the bottom here. And then we're going to put this side piece back on. You're going to clip it in at an angle like this and then slide it towards the driver's side. And it should all clip in. And then finally, we've moved on to the glove box here. The first step is putting all the wires inside. And then from here, you're going to want to put this top corner back in on this side. And it should slide back in. And then we're going to want to put this clip on in the very back corner, which will just push into place. There we go. And then lastly, we have the three clips on the bottom of the glove box that need to be pushed into place. For that, you're going to push up on the bottom of the glove box. And then once they all line up, you push down, and it should be in place now. So we've got the VLine all plugged in now, and the glove box is working normally, the cables aren't in the way. So we're ready to move on to putting the radio and display back in. Alright, so we're ready to put back in the display now. So this is our video cable T-harness here, which will be going into the back of the display. And then we've got these two harnesses here, the one with the yellow tape, which goes into this box. And then we've got this plug on the side here, which is the ground. That'll just snap right on. And then we're going to put all these cables in the back. We want to make sure that none of them get kinked up or anything. And then the top two clips are going to go in, and then we'll push down. And this cable here is going to be for the touchscreen overlay. We're going to run that through this hole. And then this should slide down onto the two pegs, just like that. And then this cable here, if you do have the touchscreen overlay, you will have to connect it. You're going to want these silver pins here to connect to the pins on the back of the ribbon cable. So we'll orient it that way. And once it's slid into place, you're just going to push down on the connector, and it should be locked in. And then we're just going to push the little bit of slack that we have towards the back. And now we'll move on to the radio. So we're ready to plug in all of our connections back here. Just to note again, these are going to go to the button panel, so we'll put those to the side again. And then we've got these other two right here with the yellow tape. These are going to go to the top here, so we'll forget about those for now. And we're just going to plug in our connections. It's going to be these three harnesses here. This plug is going to go down here in the far corner. There we go. And there normally is a factory plug in here if your car does support XM, so that will be disconnected and our harness will be in here. Next, we'll plug in our other two harnesses. And now we're going to move on to the four other factory connectors here. Should have one more connector back here. There we go. So this is the factory one that we're going to leave disconnected, and this other 12-pin one is the one that goes right down here. Now that we've got all of those in place, we can go ahead and put the radio back in. You just need to reconnect these two for the AC. And then we're going to pull these out up top. We just want to make sure that everything seats back into place correctly here. Sometimes the VLine harnesses can get caught up back here. So we're going to pull this out a little bit and just readjust some of the slack so that the radio has room to fit in fully. Alright, so we readjusted our slack, and now we're going to put in our 4 screws. We've got the 2 on top and 2 on bottom. Alright, so we're ready to put this back in place. Just going to line up the 2 clips on top and push in. There we go. And now we can screw in the 2 screws that hold this in down here. And now that those are in, we can go ahead and connect the button panel. And then the two clips on top are going to go right in here. And we'll put that at a little bit of an angle, and then we'll slide it into place. And the bottom two should line up here for our next two screws. Alright, we're ready to put this back in now. We don't want to forget this plug here, so I'm going to make sure to plug that in. And we've also done a USB flush mount in here, so the cigarette lighter slot has been changed to a USB. And that we're going to plug into our extension, the USB extension here that runs to the V-line. So now that we've got everything connected behind here, we can slide it back into place. And we're going to want to line up the boot along with getting the trim to go in on the bottom. There we go. And once it's in place, we can push it back. And you just want to make sure these clips on top snap in. And then once you've done that, you can push down. And then lastly, we'll put the shifter back on top.